My mom picked me up from the airport. My mom's pretty intense, and she looked at me and was like, you just threw away your entire life. You dropped out of college. Like, you turned down these job offers. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan? What are you going to do now? And I just looked out the window and there's a bunch of docks. And when I say docks, I mean trucking, like loading docks for trucks. I looked out the window and at the time, it was just an idea to get my mom to stop yelling at me. And I'm going to work with trucks.
From Grindstone, this is Nebraska Made, a narrative journey through the lives of Nebraska's most inspiring business leaders. We unpack the intimate details of how our guests navigated obstacles and built their companies in pursuit of the good life. I'm JT Martin, and our guest today is the CEO and co-founder of BasicBlock, a tech company looking to help streamline payroll for trucking companies. Our guest today, Taylor Monks, is just 26 years old, but he's already the founder of a fintech company called BasicBlock that's received $4 million in funding to date.
My name is Taylor Monks. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at BasicBlock.
Rumor has it that another massive round of funding is in the works, but legally, we aren't able to talk about that yet on this show. Taylor went from a rebellious adolescent to a tech entrepreneur wooing esteemed Silicon Valley investors almost overnight. And today, we're going to try to find out just how this was possible.
So I was born in Chichester, England, which is comparatively to London, a small town, probably just 45, 50 minutes outside London. I was always the kid, like even in high school, playing on the computer and doing things I probably shouldn't be to like our internet. And I'm not a very great rule follower. I've never been a great rule follower. In fact, I've actually never had a job that I didn't get fired from, like ever, or left in a way that I didn't like it, or we weren't friends anymore. Just because I always was wondering and questioning, why couldn't we do things better? Why do we do this? Why are we doing one thing one way when we should be doing it the other way?
You're a boundary pusher.
Yeah, I was always just I needed freedom to do what I needed to do to push the level of innovation or potential that the company could have. And I always felt like I could do that, but I as a young kid, typically you just fall in line and do what you're supposed to do. And that just wasn't where I got excited or wasn't what I was passionate about.
Tell me about when you moved to Nebraska in 7th grade-ish. What was your first impression when you got here?
So after I'd moved from London with my mom, my parents got divorced. We moved back to Nebraska where her sister was, my Aunt Deanna. My first impression was I remember my brother Haas and myself, we were decent football players in Arizona. And my mom sat us down. My dad was going to be a head coach here and all this stuff. My mom kind of sat us down. It's like, hey, Nebraska is going to be these boys are different. They're going to be better at football than you guys. And so you guys are probably going to sit the bench. That's what my mom pretty much told us as these young kids. So I think that my first impression was I'm just going to I'm going to be a normal average kid here. And then when I started to play football, I realized oh, actually I can compete with these people. And you recycle that even to a couple years ago when we went out to Silicon Valley, it was the same feeling. They're going to be better than you. What we realized though is hey, maybe we actually can compete there too. So it kind of all came full circle. So I've realized that now that it's okay to feel that way, but showing up and competing is the only way that you're going to be able to know who's better than who.
So Taylor spends most of his formative years in North Platte and goes to Nebraska Wesleyan for college, plays on the football team, and wins back-to-back pitch competitions, earning him an entrance into a mini accelerator in Estonia in Eastern Europe. While abroad, Taylor got his first chance to see what $1 billion startup looked like, shadowing at companies like Pipedrive, TransferWise, and Skype, and he caught the startup bug. But once he returned to Nebraska, he found himself at odds with some of his professors over his new, innovative ambitions.
Fast forward to 2017, I had invested in Bitcoin pretty early, 2013. My dad and I used to use it all the time. As he lived in London, we'd send money back and forth to each other. I had made some money, not a bunch of money, but enough money that, I felt like I had a lot of money, which in reality now is not, it was 50, 60 grand. I went to my international finance class. I was an international business major at Nebraska Wesleyan, and I wrote this white paper on basically the implications of blockchain and cryptocurrency in trade and what I thought about it. And some Bitcoin was in there too. And I turned that in for my midterm. And then we go to Thanksgiving, and then I come back and I get my paper on like Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And the professor was actually my advisor at the time, my advisor at the time. And she had failed me. And I asked her why she failed me. And she's, like, this paper is supposed to be, a factual paper, and this isn't based on facts, and this isn't real. And at that time, I knew I had a decent amount of money in my wallet, like I'd transferred my savings, and I also just had all these other feelings of like I had worked in startup companies before, and the stuff they were the stuff they were teaching me in school wasn't what I was actually meant in the real world. And I think like that moment of just like her failing me and me being so passionate about this that I just said like, you're wrong, and I'm dropping out. Like I'm like leaving. And I remember exactly where I sat. I was in the front right of the room. I was in class with a lot of my friends at the time, and I just said, I'm dropping out. Like, and she was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm dropping out. Consider this like, however you have to drop out of college, this is it. Like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not coming back. And I remember picking up my paper, throwing it in my backpack and leaving. And before I even got to, I hadn't told my mom, I had really not told any of my friends. And by the time I'd even gotten back to my house, I lived a block away from the university. I'd walked there. I'd basically bought a ticket to England, and I was gonna go immediately. Like I was out of there. So it kind of all just happened right in one kind of area, and I left like right away. And I didn't really even look back. I didn't really even think about it.
The reason that you were set off by your professor is because you wrote a paper on crypto and Bitcoin, and she didn't believe in the technology. She didn't believe that it was grounded in reality.
You're exactly right. Word for word, that's the best way to say it. And, there was definitely it was kind of the thesis really of BasicBlock at the time, like expediting payments. I still have it to this day. I believed in it, and I just couldn't believe that somebody would be so, I don't know what the word is. Like, I guess, I don't want to say arrogant, but they were just turning away from this really incredible technology that was clearly worth something. Like I had real money in my bank account that I had made from this technology. And I was like, you just can't ignore that. So I bought this ticket. I dropped out of college. I go to London. And my idea going to London, it was more like just to be off the grid, like not hang out with anyone, not text anyone. So it just gave me a lot of time to like think about what I wanted to do. In all reality, I just partied too much and spent too much money. I was like, well, I don't want to do this any longer. Like my 60 grand was dwindling fast. So that's when I came back to Nebraska, and my mom picked me up from the airport. My mom's pretty intense, and she looked at me and was like, you just threw away your entire life. You dropped out of college. Like you turned down these job offers. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan? What are you going to do now? And I just looked out the window, and there's a bunch of docks. And when I say docks, I mean trucking, like loading docks for trucks. I looked out the window, and at the time, it was just an idea to get my mom to stop yelling at me. And I'm going to work with trucks. So I didn't really know anything about trucks. It's always funny that they like think, oh, he's from Nebraska, he must know a lot about trucks. When in all reality, like it took me about a year to figure out like what trucking was like.
Yeah. Wow. And so what if there had been a corn silo out the window? Do you think you might have done a completely different company?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think I'm passionate about building businesses, whatever that business is. It could be a pencil business. It could be, a brewery. It could be whatever it is, right? And I think that in that moment, it was just like maybe like the stars aligned, and like I just got on the path that I was supposed to be on and looked out the window at that time, and it just worked out. My mom was very quick to point out, as she normally is, that I knew nothing about those trucks. But I told her, yeah, just give me a year and I'll figure it out. And, thank God I figured it out.
So Taylor becomes dead set on changing the trucking industry. And because of his early successes with cryptocurrency, he begins to look at doing it with blockchain technology. Hence the name BasicBlock. So what exactly is blockchain technology? Well, think about blockchain as a way of establishing trust. In simple terms, blockchain is a set of really complex math problems that are so unique that they act like kind of a fingerprint for authentication. So if someone sends money over the network on the blockchain, the transaction combines some of the information about a recently solved math problem in the chain and some about the current transaction and the current math problems. And then it builds a new math problem that can't be changed, hacked, or duplicated because it's just too complicated. So it's virtually impossible to cheat the system, which is why you can send money overseas with Bitcoin in the blink of an eye and authenticate it versus wiring money through a bank where the transaction needs to be verified by a human. Well, Taylor thought, what if we use this in trucking supply chains to transmit information faster and transact payments? So that's what he set out to do. He partnered with a dev shop, He started talking to every investor that would talk to him and every truck driver that would hear from him. So you make this announcement to your mom. What do you do the next day? What's the first step that you take? Do you go look at a truck? Do you talk to a truck driver? What do you do?
Yeah, so I called my first co-founder, Brett Byman. I called him and pretty much sent him this novel, like 3-page text. Like, this is my idea. In reality, I had no idea what I was going to do, but this is what my idea is. And Brett had started companies before and been successful. And I had met him when I was at university, and we set off to work. And realistically, it was let's just go to some truck stops at first. Brett's really main job at the time was just keeping me alive, I would say. Like, making sure Taylor doesn't die and just making sure that like all the corporate and legal stuff that we probably have to do gets done. So I would go to truck stops and I would talk to random truckers. And then, then I had the bright idea. They're always bright ideas at the time. And then you look back and like, that's stupid. But I had the bright idea. I had told Brett, I'm going to get in one of these trucks with these guys. He's like, well, I was like, no, I'm just going to see what happens. Let's see if we can learn how to be truckers. And the only way I know how to learn is just to go do. And that was when the real big learning started to happen, is I started hitchhiking around with truck drivers and like learning what it took to be a trucker. And I had drove thousands of miles, and I realistically learned how to be a trucker. And I then had all this experience, like technology, that I'd brought with me throughout college. And I was like, wow, I see a really big problem here. We should go try and solve it. That took about, I would say, 8 months. So I spent pretty much 8 months researching, because trucking and transportation, logistics in general, and freight in general is really complex. There's so many different parties involved that it took us a while. And then we also had to look at the market and understand what people were doing, and then understand how we could fit in. And then we went off and did it, and it was awesome. It was fun.
What's something about trucking culture or the trucking industry that really stood out to you as maybe weird or archaic, or something that, wow, you guys eat runza every single meal of the day? I didn't expect that.
Well, I think they're just genuinely good people that like they're entrepreneurs just like me. I mean, 93% of the trucking market are trucking companies that are less than 8 trucks. So it's these mom and pop shops. They're just like me. I think they get this stereotype that they don't know what they're stupid, but that's not actually true. There's a lot of fucking smart truck drivers. Like, I met truck drivers that have mined Bitcoin in their trucks. Like, I've met truck drivers that are big into Doge and all these like different cryptocurrencies, right? So they're smart dudes. I think that what attracted me to tech is you had these kind of overlooked industry, this last frontier, this final frontier of trucking that was really built on just shitty tech. And using, paper documents to move around all the equipment that you can imagine. Like, I mean, everything in this room probably came on a truck, right? Everything.
It sounds like they've really kind of accepted you as an ally. And, whether it's, your Nebraska roots or your kind of naivete about the industry and your willingness to learn and really kind of get behind the wheel with them and, travel the miles, seems like they really.
Yeah, literally. You. Yeah, right. Like I think that I agree. There's not a lot of people out there that can relate to a trucker and like put themselves in their shoes. I think across our entire team, whether it's Brett, Corey, our CTO, Cole, our head sales guy, like whoever it is on our team, like we do a really great job of like closing our eyes and being in their shoes. I think that our team we're terrible at empathy for each other, but we have incredible empathy for our user.
Hey, Nebraskans. If you like this podcast, check out the other podcast from Grindstone called Spark to Fire, where Grindstone CEO Landon Rhodes interviews entrepreneurs and elite performers to unpack what made them successful from both a business and a personal growth standpoint. You can find Spark to Fire on all of the major streaming platforms. BasicBlock is rolling. You guys have clients. The technology is getting honed in on. You actually have a product now. Tell me about raising money.
Raising money now is really easy. Back then it was really hard because we didn't have a lot, and we were from Nebraska. We didn't have a lot of money. Getting to that point was just ridiculous. I think a lot of people don't understand, like, we worked for years, like no salary. I think it was like a year and a half or 2 years that Brett and I didn't take a salary. The original 2 co-founders before we brought Corey Collins on. We had a lot of hot leads, and we got to like, the 9th inning with so many investors and just pulled out. And it was just like, back to the drawing board, right? Like another Solarion study or those types of things. And we had no money. We had just won the Lincoln Launch Grant. We were using that to develop. So Brett and I still weren't paying a salary. We were running out of money. And I had this idea to go to Silicon Valley and participate in this program called Draper University, yet we didn't have the money to pay for it, nor did we have the money to even fly me there. So I emailed Tim Draper, who's the head of that, and he actually gave me a full scholarship to go. So I get this full scholarship to go for 5 weeks, live in Silicon Valley with one of the best entrepreneurs and investors ever, Tim Draper, with all these kids, right? And these kids didn't really have businesses, but it gave me the opportunity to go live there and potentially meet investors. That was what I thought would happen. So I emailed Christina Oldfather, and we didn't have the money to fly there. So I emailed Christina Oldfather. She gets a founder's grant for us, we're talking 24 hours or less. She gives us basically $1,000. We use that to pay for flights and me to get there, right? And some other stuff that I had to pay for to go. Get there. And I remember the day before I leave, that Sunday or whatever it was, I was at Easter and my parents and my mom was pretty much come back with a check or don't come back at all type of thing. So we leave, go to Silicon Valley. We're there for 5 weeks. I get a meeting with Jason Calacanis, who is definitely the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time when it comes to angel investing. Fact. Got a meeting with him, and it was absolutely incredible. I mean, we go to the accelerator, and it was funny. They were interviewing. We were all sitting around this table, and before they were, to get the interview, it's tough. But then once you get the interview, you finally get to Jason. He's the last one. You go through these things. We're getting through. And they were asking, how many full-time employees do you have? How much revenue did you make in 2019 or all of 2018? What's your revenue in Q1 of 2019 or whatever it was? People are saying, oh, we made $500,000 last year, or oh, we're on track to do $500,000 this quarter. And we didn't have revenue. We only had pre-sales. We didn't even have a product. Our product had gotten launched that day that I'm sitting there about to meet him. And we push so hard to get one user, because I know Jason just wants a product out in market and some small users. So we get there, and she asks me, and I go, we don't we just have pre-sales, we don't, and she goes,
were you intimidated?
I mean, yeah, at that moment, it was I remember leaving, there's no way. These guys have real companies. We're not a real company. We only have when they wrote, they were what do you mean pre-sales? And we're well, people bought the product before we have the product. And it was we were having to explain it. I definitely didn't look like I belonged. I looked like a kid from Nebraska. And the next thing you know, a week later, he signed us a check for $100,000. And I actually have money to fly back.
How did he break you the news?
Jason Mott called me and he just said hey, you're in. And I was are you serious? Great. What do we do? What's the plan? And I remember calling Brett, and he's no way. And I'm dude, this is a huge deal. It's you go to Silicon Valley, and people knew we were going to Silicon Valley. Obviously, we're still trying to raise money before we left. And I remember there was a firm here in Nebraska that, was no, you're just you're not early enough, or you're too early, you're too early, you're too early, you're too early. And I just told them I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and I'm going to raise this money from the best angel investor of all time. When I come back, you're going to call me. When you call me, I'm going to have a million options now, and I don't have to take your money, and I burned that bridge so hard. We did it. We went out, we did it. We said we were going to go kill Bigfoot, but we didn't just kill Bigfoot. We killed the entire family. We brought him back, and everybody's holy shit. They did it, right? And it was incredible. The next day after we announced it, we had investors from all over the country hitting us up. How can we get in? What do you want? What's the deal? Which is amazing. We raised money right away, and then we were just off to the races. It was easily the biggest moment of our company, at the time, that just catapulted us into kind of this different mentality and growth and kind of mindset, I would say.
I mean, I bet your mom was pretty surprised after you looked out the window, yeah, I think I'm going to work on trucks. And then all of a sudden, yeah, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and work on trucks now.
Yeah, it was I think my mom would say I was just meant to do it.
So BasicBlock is off to the races and has a network of investors pushing them forward. They get money from Invest Nebraska, the Global Financial Group, The Rise of the Rest, Emergent Ventures, SaaS Ventures, and others, which brings us to where we are today at BasicBlock, as they continue to work to disrupt the $760 billion trucking industry. You're sort of living proof that a kid here in Nebraska can build a tech company, go to Silicon Valley, get product market fit, find the, industry validation to get something off the ground like this. And, you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. It's really fucking hard though. I think people don't realize that. It's the statement, more money, more problems, is 100% as accurate as it can be. As you raise more money, the expectations become much greater. and the pressure that is put on, that everybody knows, we're a small team, that everybody has, becomes, I don't want to say toxic, but like intoxicating.
What do you think about starting BasicBlock in Nebraska helped you, maybe even just from a personal standpoint?
What's great about Nebraska and building here is how connected everybody is. So it's really easy to find mentors and people that have done it before, whether it's the CEO at Huddle or at Builder Trend or those guys, right? They've been through that hyper growth phase that I've never been through. And I think that the benefits of having that in our state currently are really great. That's something that we're just really kind of finding out who we are as an ecosystem right now. I think we're really immature as an ecosystem. And now we've had these companies scaled and we've had these leaders go through it, that our company, BasicBlock, is kind of the first one that can lean on these other individuals that just didn't.
Today, BasicBlock has seen about 60% growth month over month as they continue to grow their offerings. Look out for BasicBlock in the headlines as they aim to close their next round of funding, which Taylor promises to be a head turner. I'm JT Martin, and this has been a Grindstone production. Grindstone is one of the premier production and marketing firms here in Lincoln, offering everything you need to grow your business, from video and podcast production to social media management and media buying. You can learn more by visiting grindstoneagency.com.
It is like this kind of become this like funny line of, yeah, I'm from Nebraska and what we have is corn, college football, and trucks. I say it every time, the first time I ever meet any venture capitalist.
I love it. It totally like compartmentalizes you in their heads. It's memorable. I love it. That's great.